It's June 25th. I'm Paul Joseph Watson. Welcome to Infowars Nightly News.
Tonight on the Infowars Nightly News, Paul Joseph Watson speaks with Douglas J. Hagmann, founder of the Northeast Intelligence Network, about Fast and Furious and GoDaddy's censorship of Obama's truth spots. Plus, white skies coming to a horizon near you, courtesy of the globalist agenda. And we announced the Phase 1 winner of the Obama Poster Contest. All that and more on the Infowars Nightly News.
Top story tonight, DHS cell phone alert system follows you around. Not only does the Department of Homeland Security's new emergency alert system force cell phone users to receive text messages directly from our dear leader, President Obama, it also, quote, follows the user wherever they go, according to newly released details of the program. Now, if you weren't aware of this, we've been covering it for years virtually. All new cell phones in the US are required by the federal government to have a special chip in them which basically allows the feds to send you text messages which automatically pop up on your phone. Now, if you haven't got a new phone, don't worry, because the older phones are receiving operating system upgrades. You saw the big brouhaha last week about Apple iOS 6, and it's all part of the same system. Everything's going to be upgraded to receive these presidential emergency alerts. And by the way, you can't opt out of them. They're mandatory. At least the ones directly from Barack Obama are mandatory. And so we've also learned today with this news story that the messages are also going to be delivered with their own special ringtone and vibration. So the sheeple are going to be made to feel very special when they receive their informative message from our dear leader. But until now, we didn't know about this little added extra bombshell that's come out today. According to Todd Krause, the weather warning coordinator at the National Weather Service's Chanhassen office, the WEA alert system tracks cell phone users wherever they go in order to deliver region-specific warnings. Quote, what the system does is actually follow you around wherever you are going, based on users' proximity to cellular towers, Krause told TwinCities.com. So basically, Big Sis needs to know exactly where you are at all times in order to send these fear-mongering messages, which I call them that because in the only major test of them that they've done so far, in New Jersey, it created nothing but panic, confusion, anxious, terror-filled 9/11 calls because the message basically said, you know, shelter in place. This is a government announcement. It completely went over the top. Everybody freaked out. Again, achieving the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do, which is calm people down in an emergency. So seeing as anyone who's, you know, publicly active now has a cell phone, they carry it around with them at all times. And with the admission now that the DHS is not only going to send people, bombard them with messages that you can't opt out of, they're going to now track you everywhere you go via the same system. It's almost as anathema to privacy, as if you had a microchip embedded in your forehead. And again, mandatory, you can't opt out. It pops up, Barack Obama's smiling face on your phone, delivering the latest fear-mongering alert. And it's all about the fact, as we've documented, they're building this infrastructure of informational control through this emergency alert system. You've already seen, in terms of the media and broadcasting platform, they can override and hijack anything they want so long as it's in the name of a civil emergency. And that's eventually going to be tied into the surveillance camera IntelliStreets light hubs that are being rolled out in major cities across the US. So this meshed network of surveillance is ultimately also planned to be designed to be a big brother announcement grid where they just bark orders at you as you're passing by the streetlight, also linked in with these emergency alerts. So now they admit they can track you, they can follow you around, all through Big Sis. More police state news. Media promotes troops on streets to cut down on crime. Following reports last week that the US Army had wheeled tanks rolling down residential streets and highways in St. Louis as part of a training program, local news media channels featured interviews with residents who praised the sight of troops on the streets as a valuable crime-fighting tool, similar to that used in foreign countries. Now, you're not going to believe the two idiots, literal morons, that the news media found for these interviews, and make no mistake about it, you know, they probably talked to half a dozen, 10 people, and they deliberately picked these two morons who talk about how great it would be to see foreign troops on the streets of America, just like in countries overseas. It's such a boon for freedom. So let's go to the clip.
People who live and work in this neighborhood say they think the training here is a good idea.
I think it's the same way when you go out to other countries, when you go out of town, they don't have police officers, they have troops. And I think it kind of scares a lot of people.
Like cut down on crime?
Crime, yeah, cut down on a whole lot of crime, because they don't know if they're military or they're police.
I think it's fantastic because this might slow down some of the crime rate. You know, the crime rate might go down. You know, that's what I think of.
So they've gone out and found these two morons, you know, openly calling for the US to be turned into some kind of banana republic, despotic state where the military conducts law enforcement to scare the people like it's a good thing. And the local media, they don't pick a cross-section of opinions. They pick these two idiots who are openly calling for a military dictatorship. And that becomes the whole editorial tone of the story. Because, you know, it works so well in foreign countries where the military is the police. You know, the former Soviet Union, that was a walk in the park. That was so much fun. You know, North Korea does it. I guess it's great. Posse Comitatus, Declaration of Independence, both say that troops involved in law enforcement is illegal, but this Fox News channel openly advocates it through these idiotic Vox Pop interviews, which you just saw. And remember also when the troops invaded South Florida a few weeks ago for this unannounced raid on a building in the middle of the night. You know, explosions, gunfire, nobody was informed of it. And how did the media characterize it afterwards? You know, was it a disturbing martial law pretext? Was it even just a mere inconvenience to the people being terrified, woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of explosions? No. This local media news channel called it a cool tourist story. That's what they called it. So it sounds ridiculous, but it makes perfect sense when you know that this is about an acclimation process. It's part of the transitioning agenda for the US Army to be deployed domestically, as we've documented, is outlined in the Chief of Staff of the US Army, General Raymond T. O'Durnio, who in a recent Foreign Affairs piece, which of course is the publication of the Council on Foreign Relations, said that that was the plan, that the Army is going to be transmissioned into domestic law enforcement. So the fact that the media is out saying either it's cool or it's perfectly normal, or worse yet, that America should somehow aspire to foreign countries that have troops patrol the streets instead of cops, like these two idiots they found on the street called for, then you know that it's all part of the acclimation process. Another example of why the mainstream media is losing its readership and viewership at a rapid level. And here's yet another media dismisses warning about tyranny and troops on the street as kooky conspiracy theory by Kurt Nimmo, Infowars.com. Chad Garrison's critique of the news that the Army is driving military vehicles through the streets of St. Louis, Missouri, is typical of the media response to this outrageous event. A local television station's coverage, quote, really ignited the crazies in the same way Orson Welles' War of the World radio broadcast did in 1938, Garrison chides. Garrison, who writes for the Riverfront Times, neglected to note that Welles' drama was pure fiction, whereas the troops on the streets of St. Louis are real. In addition to lambasting Zero Hedge and other sites covering the deployment, Garrison singled out Alex Jones, who he sarcastically states produced the video below from a basement bunker. And so basically this mainstream media hack has tried to make light of the fact that there's heavily armored tanks rolling down the streets, tried to make some sophomoric joke about it by calling us all crazies merely for reporting on it. And then he embeds the YouTube clip of Alex Jones talking about it in a video blog, and he daren't even mention his name. He calls him, quote, he calls Alex Jones, quote, an online conspiracy theorist. Well, unfortunately for you, Chad, that online conspiracy theorist has an audience about 1,000 times larger than the pointless little establishment media rag that you write for. And you know, I just love it how the mainstream media tries to marginalize the alternative media, tries to marginalize Infowars, when in fact we're the ones that have already marginalized them 1,000 times over by taking their readership, because we at least try to tell the truth, not just make up sophomoric rubbish like this idiot did in response to this tanks rolling down the street story. So again, Chad, Mr. Chad of Riverfront Times, with his tiny minuscule audience, is basically insulting people's intelligence by making jokes out of it all. Speaking of which, another insult on our intelligence, CNBC admits we're all slaves to a global government bank, to a global government run by bankers. Revelation of the method once again. Let's play the clip.
Now, the question is, do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? Jim Urio, aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do? Aren't we all just counting on the fact that there's a Bernanke put and that we won't go any lower than, say, 5% down from here?
Of course we are, because if we look at the economic data, there's nothing to get excited about in that. We are absolutely slaves to central banks, because and we'd love to be slaves of the economy, but the economic numbers continue to do nothing but trend low.
Yeah, and listen to what the Fed did this weekend. I think they really screwed up here. They said that we're going to do this Operation Twist through the end of the year. In other words, they're going to create uncertainty about what happens after Operation Twist, right at the same time that the fiscal cliff kicks in. Do we really want all that uncertainty?
So there we have CNBC graciously revealing the truth to us all, like they've just discovered it, some big secret, even though we've known it for years. And so the question is, you know, why are you seeing this on CNBC? Why are they doing it? Why is a network which is owned by Comcast and General Electric, you know, owned by the military-industrial complex itself, why are they offering us this nugget of truth? Well, it's two reasons. One is the fact that they've lied so much about the engineered global economic collapse that they risk becoming completely irrelevant. You know, I looked at the latest Nielsen figures that show virtually all of CNBC's flagship shows are bleeding viewers, Closing Bell, Squawk Box, all of it hemorrhaging viewers. I read that Squawk Box recently drew its lowest viewing figure of the year so far, which was 99,000 viewers. I mean, we make YouTube videos routinely that get double that amount of viewers, and that's their flagship show. And they're hemorrhaging viewers, people disappearing. So, you know, to avoid becoming irrelevant, to try and hold on to some of those viewers, they're trying to entice people back by sounding like Max Kaiser. They're desperate for viewers, and it's pathetic, and it shows. But the other reason is, you know, learned helplessness. They're indoctrinating people with the idea that they have no control over the situation and can't change it. And they're throwing it in your face. You know, we're ruled by a global government run by bankers. Deal with it. That's just the way it is. You know, it's the establishment announcing what they're doing to you. It's the final level of mind control where they just flagrantly come out and throw it in your face. I found a quote for Revelation of the Method, which is, when you tell someone what you're doing to them, murder, mayhem, kidnap, rape, you name it, and they do nothing to stop you or protect themselves, you have created a doubly enslaved subject. So that's one of the definitions of Revelation of the Method, and it's perfectly illustrated in this CNBC clip that you just saw, where they flagrantly throw it in your face. We're run by a banking dictatorship. Deal with it. Can't do anything about it. Move on. October surprise. Will Israel attack Iran before the election? Kurt Nimmo, Infowars.com. On Saturday, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported a senior Israeli official is saying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has decided to attack Iran prior to the elections in the U.S. Quote, U.S. defense contracts, an Iranian F-16 acquisition, and Israel's new military preparation suggest that all sides are getting ready for whatever may come, Haaretz wrote, citing a report by Business Insider. Business Insider and Haaretz did not venture to speculate when Israel would launch such an attack. On Sunday, Michael Carmichael suggested that the attack would occur during the Democrat National Convention. Quote, military experts have long agreed that the sweet spot for an Israeli attack on Iran will be this coming September or October, precisely because of the timing of the US presidential election cycle, Carmichael explains. So we've got that whole situation bubbling under the surface once again. Of course, previous reports said that the attack had been delayed until 2013. You routinely get rumors of an October surprise during election season. But meanwhile, not far away, this very much ties into it. US struggles to install proxy brotherhood in Egypt by Tony Cartolucci. Were anyone to still believe the rhetoric of the so-called Arab Spring, one would be admittedly confused over the emerging political landscape in Egypt, where the military establishment and the Muslim Brotherhood have emerged from what was supposedly a pro-democracy popular uprising. However, if anyone understood that the pro-democracy protesters were in fact US State Department funded, trained and equipped mobs providing cover for the attempted installation of the Muslim Brotherhood amongst many other political Western proxies, the current battle would make perfect sense. So we've now got Mohamed Morsi as the new president of Egypt, along with the Muslim Brotherhood that's backing him, who have openly, in addition, backed the NATO-led attempt to overthrow Syria. So again, the people of a nation have been completely duped by one of these fake US State Department-funded color revolutions with the aid of the April 6 movement, which again is nothing more than a front for the US State Department. It's all part of the path to Persia. First Syria, then Iran. And you saw what happened to Gaddafi and Mubarak. Any regime that's not completely on board with this New World Order, with this drive through the Middle East, is subverted or toppled. And the Muslim Brotherhood, as we know, is also financing the so-called Free Syrian Army to destabilize Assad for and on behalf of the NATO powers. Basically, they're just a puppet organization, and that's why they've been handed symbolic control of Egypt. Another story that we had, Hani Noor el-Din, again of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Egyptian member of parliament, actually a member of a group designated as a terrorist organization by none other than the US State Department. And he went to Washington to meet with Obama administration officials. So just like the MEK in Iran, LIFG in Libya, both designated as terrorist groups by the State Department, and yet both working with the US military-industrial complex to overthrow Iran and Libya. Now you've got the same situation in Egypt, where basically these radicals, these Muslim Brotherhood that are on the side of NATO in every imperial venture, are now in power. So again, what the news media calls the Arab Spring, what is marketed as an organic grassroots uprising, has once again resulted in working towards the long-term goals of the military-industrial complex. Now, the Brotherhood's in charge in Egypt. The path to Persia via Syria and Iran is all the more clear. And also sticking with Syria on the next story, Turkey to convene emergency NATO meeting. Turkey is to convene an emergency session of NATO after declaring that Syria's shootdown of one of its fighter jets amounted to a direct challenge to its national security. The Turkish government brushed off protestations in Damascus that Friday's incident was an accident, accusing Syria of deliberately bringing down the F-4 Phantom both in international airspace and without warning. So after first trying to downplay all this, Turkey's now scheming with NATO to try and dress this up as some kind of provocation to insinuate that Syria's committed an act of aggression. And we've got this clip, which we're going to play now, people on a beach in Syria near where this plane went down, near where it was shot down. And they're eyewitnesses, and you can hear the gunfire in the distance. And if you blow up the video, you can see the plane plunge into the sea. And, you know, this is supposedly 13 miles off the coast, and they're claiming that Syria had no right to shoot down this Turkish fighter jet because it was in international airspace, even though they admitted in the first place that it had already violated Syria's airspace. So just imagine for a second that you've got a foreign fighter plane, or indeed any plane, coming in at a distance of 13 miles from the White House. How long is it going to take a fighter jet to cover 13 miles? You know, imagine you're in New York looking out over the Hudson River and you see a fighter jet in the distance. Do you think the Pentagon would want to shoot it down? Well, you know, unless it's 9/11, where for one day all standard operating procedure was suspended, then yes, of course they're going to shoot it down. And Syria's on an emergency war footing. Of course they're going to shoot down a fighter jet that's so close that people on a beach can see it being blown out of the sky. And again, international airspace, they've just crafted it out of nothing after admitting that it already violated Syria's airspace in the first place when the story emerged on Friday. But no, we saw the outrage, the immediate outrage again from Hillary Clinton and William Hague, because of course it's only NATO powers that are allowed to violate international airspace. There's only NATO powers that are allowed to bombard broken back third world countries at will. Oh, but I forget, I'm sorry, that's actually called a humanitarian no-fly zone, and all they're doing is dropping love bombs. Let's get it straight. So basically, Turkey's freaking out. They're running to NATO. Warmongers are trying to gin it up and say that it was, you know, an act of aggression, trying to exploit it to increase power, to increase pressure on Assad. And it's all a hoax. I mean, they admitted that it had gone into to Syrian airspace. The people on the beach could see it. They shot the plane down, and now Turkey's up in arms about it, and they're trying to use it as propaganda. So it continues to be an unfolding story. Next story, geoengineering could turn skies white. Ah, Scientific American. The white haze that hangs over many major cities could become a familiar sight everywhere if the world decides to try geoengineering to create a cooler planet. Scientists have long suspected that one oft-discussed geoengineering technique, shooting tiny sulfate particles into the upper atmosphere to deflect sunlight, could turn the blue sky white. Nature has already provided a basic proof of concept. When Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines in 1991, spewing tons of sulfate particles into the atmosphere, it temporarily whitened the sky. In a related story out of the Daily Mail, the transatlantic jet trails visible from space, how contrails can stay in the sky for up to 14 hours. And in this article, they admit that, quote, what they call contrails are forming into clouds. Quote, overall contrails create additional cirrus cloud cover, said Patrick Minnis, senior scientist at NASA's Langley Research Center. So they've gone from calling anyone who talks about chemtrails kooks to now explaining how it's all natural and it's nothing to worry about. Problem is, as you can see from all the comments in the Daily Mail article, these contrails only started hanging around for 14 hours from about the mid-1990s onwards. Decades before that, that kind of phenomena was never witnessed. So there's no chance in hell that it can be a natural event without some kind of outside influence. And they also admit in this Daily Mail article, which is based off NASA quotes, that creating artificial clouds through contrails is a potential way of preventing the planet from warming up. So they're openly saying it. Yeah, we're creating clouds, but it's all for global warming. Don't worry about it. Because simultaneously, you've got an army of crackpot geoengineering scientists led by, you know, Mr. Planetary Regime, Mr. Let's sterilize everybody, Mr. You know, let's poison people's drinking water for the good of the earth, John P. Aldrin, being paid millions in government grants to spray sulfur particles into the upper atmosphere for the very same purpose of creating these artificial clouds. So again, we're seeing revelation of the method, as you saw with the CNBC clip. You know, just as the sheeple are starting to stir on this whole chemtrails issue, the likes of, you know, Scientific American, Daily Mail, they come out and assure us that it's all natural, nothing to worry about. But the problem is, the impact that these chemtrails are actually having on the environment, yes, it's a real environmental impact, unlike the man-made global warming hoax. The impact is far from natural. We featured Rosalind Peterson from the Skywatch organization back probably about 18 months ago now. And she's documented how in California these planes fly loops around certain areas. You know, there's no destination. They're not going from point A to point B. They're just flying around in a big circle back and forth again, dispersing chemtrails. And when they actually analyze the water samples that have been, after the chemtrails have dropped down into the oceans, they found aluminium and barium, which are the two compounds when combined create clouds. That's the whole purpose behind chemtrails, or at least it's the major one. So this is already happening. you know, mass testing on the public through geoengineering without anyone's consent, without any kind of public debate about it. And it's being run by the same kind of mad scientists who want population reduction, you know, want to sterilize us through our water supply and all the rest of it, John P. Holdren's planetary regime. And then we've got all the projects, as we've documented, focused around injecting sulfur into the atmosphere, which is what this NASA thing talks about, which is proven to cause both acid rain and lower the immune system of human beings. But now, thanks to NASA and all the experts, we can go back to sleep, because suddenly, even though this has only started happening from 15 years ago onwards, it's all natural, it's all fun, it's all happy. Just don't look up in the sky, keep your head to the ground, and everything's going to be all right. And conveniently for them, that argument avoids them having to justify geoengineering, which itself is opposed by a multitude of scientists, because they know all the untold environmental disasters that it could precipitate. So just by claiming that, you know, artificial cloud formation through contrails is a magical, natural phenomenon that just happened to appear out of nowhere 15 years ago is not going to cut it. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. This has only been witnessed over the past 15 years. It was not witnessed in previous decades. And whenever these chemtrails are analyzed, we find out that they're directly related to geoengineering and cloud formation. Quote of the day on Infowars Nightly News comes from our good friend Eric Holder, who we're going to talk about, of course, with the interview coming up. Though this nation has proudly thought of itself as an ethnic melting pot in things racial, we have always been and continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards. So speaks our good friend Eric Holder, who himself has been busy for months being exactly that, a lying coward, refusing to acknowledge the Obama administration's role in Fast and Furious, refusing to turn over documents, claiming that emails that talk about Fast and Furious directly are talking about something completely different. So the lying coward Eric Holder lecturing us all about not being lying cowards, something quite ironic in that quote. Now we're going to throw to Rob Dew, who's got some breaking news about the winner of the Stop Obama Dictator Poster Contest, and also an update on the Infowars Reporter Contest. So now we go to Rob Dew.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Before we get to the winners of the Obama Poster Contest that we've just launched, this is the Phase 1, and then we're going to have a Phase 2 winner in a couple weeks. I wanted to share with you a video that we just posted on the Alex Jones channel, and it is entitled Whistleblower, TSA Hiring Criminals on Purpose. And we had a whistleblower call in from a TSA checkpoint in Rhode Island, and he is confirming everything that we've been saying concerning the criminals. And they purposely look for prisoners, hire them out of work release programs, and that's to check you and your family, because now the old criminals are actually working with the good guys, and we are the criminals. So let's go to that video. When we come back, we're going to announce the winner of the Phase 1 Obama Poster Contest.
Rob, thank you for having the courage to call in. I know I bash the TSA itself. I'm talking about the system and the leaders of it, not you individually. I just get so desperate over the whole thing that I do kind of get mean, but I appreciate you having the courage to call in. Rob in Rhode Island, you're on the air. Tell us what you think about the TSA and what's happening.
Hi, Alex. How are you? Sorry, I'm a little nervous on here today. Basically, what I want to bring to your attention is the fact that in the last week, we've had supervisors come out and say, we need to check bags of people that are at the airport picking passengers up. So, like, for instance, my supervisor had me go through a woman's diaper bag the other day. Now, the woman clearly had 2 children and was clearly there just to pick up her husband. But she's like, oh, there could be a bomb in there or something else.
So now they're going past the checkpoint. As they've said, they're going to start, this was in the news last week, expanding into the parking lot everywhere.
Correct. We're doing patrols in the parking lot with dogs. We're even going as far now as the train station, because the train station is connected to the airport here, and we have guys walking around the train station, walking around the rental cars. We're inspecting cars coming into the parking garage. I mean, we fully expanded. We're no longer just at the gate and just at the security checkpoint, Alex.
Now, I know a lot of people got into this early on as a good-paying job. Now it's incrementally got worse. I've seen statistics that over 80% of TSA workers don't want to do the groping. What effect is it having, all the criticism of what the TSA is doing?
Well, we have a lot of passengers now that, you know, as they're going through the checkpoint, they're saying, you know, please don't touch my junk and everything else. And I'll be honest with you, I work in the back end. I run the cameras and everything else. I'm not out touching people. And there's guys in the coffee room and everything else, and we all have a coalition together that we won't touch people in certain areas. But the problem is, as soon as the supervisor comes over and sees us not following procedures, you're out the door.
I was about to say, I saw a headline that they've been firing a bunch of people last week because they're refusing to really grab the junk hard. They, you know, okay, I'm going to go through the motions. They've caught them acting like they're doing a pat down. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so, again, what they're doing is creating groups that will follow orders.
Correct. And basically my job is to observe the rest of my fellow employees, and if they're not following the procedure to the line, I'm supposed to write them up, and you get 2 warnings, you're out the door. And we're actually getting guys that used to be former prisoners at the ACI and everything else that have certain issues and are not all there. They're psychopaths.
Oh, let me stop you. I saw that where they're not doing the full background check. You're telling me, as a TSA supervisor of TSA, did you say they're hiring prisoners?
Doing is we have a program in the state of Rhode Island where we'll take prisoners that are out for nonviolent crimes and drug offenses and everything else, basically sociopaths, and we're putting them through the runaround. We're sending them to like a 10-day course and getting them out in uniform, out checking people.
This is huge breaking news. I knew that they were ignoring the background check and hiring defrock priest and things.
It's worse than that. We're getting them right out of the ACI. We're getting them from the unemployment office, and they're telling us to screen the people, and the people that look competent to put their application in one pile, and the other people that are willing, like on the power trip, put them in another pile and give them the chance.
So people that come in that are professional and aren't creeps, you're told don't hire them. Hire people with criminal records.
Correct.
Oh, man.
We have the Corey system up and everything else here, and we go right through them. And if they have a background and it's something like violence or abusing authority or power, we put them right in. We put them guys on the floor first day. Absolutely sickening.
No, I've wondered why I've had a few of them come up and get in my face, and I'm like, you really think you're intimidating me? Hold on, I got to talk to you some more. And we got calls from, we got more TSA people calling in. This is big news. I've got to get, wow.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.
But Rob, what he's saying has been confirmed. But they say, oh, it's a mistake. We hire felons and child molesters, to be TSA. But he's saying, no, this isn't an accident. Of course, all authoritarian. Hitler did it. Stalin did it. Mao did it. They hire criminals. And he's saying they're being told, well, I mean, what do you say whenever they're hire people that are violent criminals? I mean, this is no wonder they don't want whistleblowing, because that's illegal. I mean, there's terrorists everywhere that are going to kill us, but we need to hire criminals to be the TSA, 10 days of training, and then you say they're, I mean, I saw it in the news, they're now in the parking lots.
Basically, 10 days of training, and even more than that. See, we'll get Iraq veterans, and I have nothing against veterans at all, but we'll get a lot of veterans that come back, and, they have post-traumatic stress and everything else, and they encourage us to hire them, too. It's all about the power trip, and it's all about, having people bug their eyes out at the public and getting the public conditioned to the fact that the police state is coming.
So do they say bug your eyes out and act powerful?
Yeah, they tell us, make sure you have your chest held high and stand nice and tall, and make sure you eyeball people, and make sure you let these people know that you're in charge. You're the power. You're the law.
Well, you saw the ad for Seattle. It said, we want you to be imperious. And imperious means arrogant and in your face.
Correct. And to take it a level deeper, too, I have friends that are in the National Guard down here. The past 3 weeks, they've been mobilizing armored personnel carriers, tanks, surface-to-air missile battery things from Otis Air Force Base to all over around the state of Rhode Island and up towards Air Mass and everything else. We've seen a lot of equipment moving around.
I know. It's total mobilization ahead of the American people, and it's a nightmare situation. Sir, could you write an email? We won't give out your email address or anything, but could you write an email? I'll put you on hold and send it to one of my writers so we can do an article? And but you know, shall we just have some of the basics of what you're saying in a written?
Yeah, I could actually fax you some paperwork over or whatever and give you some documents. I mean,
oh, let's do that, guys. I always forget. What's the fax number? I'm always asking for it, and then. Yeah, I don't think I even have a. I mean, I know we have fax numbers, and it used to be on the wall over here, but I never give it out. We'll privately keep you on hold here, and then give you the back, you know, BAT number, email, and give you a. Okay, let me just give it to him off air. In fact, just give it to me right now, and then I'll give it to him off air. And again, this guy's got the right attitude. Stand up against this now. Don't just get cowed. I'm going to go to Fi here in a minute. Stay there, Fi. Rob, guys, tell me that number again one more time. Okay, I got that. I got that. Have we checked that number lately? Is that working? I mean, who gave you that? I mean, well, who knows? It's on the board there. It may be to, like, Siberia or something. You know, it might be to, like, Timbuktu, for all I know. Got so many numbers hanging around here. It might be to the local radio station or something. Wow, that's amazing. I tell you what, I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to get your phone number. I'm going to have one of the reporters call you. And I just want to tell you, folks, show tips at Infowars.com. TSA people, you don't have to commit crimes. And it is a crime. When people above you, they're involved in the crime, say, we want you to hire imperious, criminal record thugs to get in people's faces. Absolutely, truly disgusting that this is happening. I am just reeling right now, absolutely blown away. Rob, before I put you on hold, I'm going to come back and talk to Fi. Anything else you'd like to add for folks out there?
I just asked the folks that they really need to wake up and they need to realize that, you know, time is short. And, you know, World War II is repeating itself. You know, we're right at the precipice of where Weimar Republic was. And if people don't wake up now, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, no, a bunch of criminal banks took over America. They're getting ready to absolutely have re-education camps.
So Alex is going to cover more on this tomorrow. We're going to have, hopefully, the documents come in that he was talking about, and we'll be able to confirm this to the world and let people know that we aren't kidding around when we are serious about what the TSA is, and these people need to be stopped. Now,
it's Paul Joseph Watson, and we're back on Infowars Nightly News. Once again, congratulations to the fantastic entries and, of course, the winners of the Obama poster contest, which you were just watching there during the commercial. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Douglas J. Hagmann, founder and director of the Northeast Intelligence Network, and he's also the CEO of a private investigative agency serving a roster of Fortune 500 clients. And due to his expertise in covert surveillance and counterterrorism, Mr. Hagmann has been used as an operational asset by the U.S. Department of Justice, the FBI, as well as the Pennsylvania and New York State police agencies. And the website is homelandsecurity.us. Doug, welcome to Infowars Nightly News.
Mr. Watson, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, later on, we're going to get into a whole nother issue, which is about how GoDaddy has basically terminated your website, and the explanation as to why is just staggering, so people should stay tuned for that. But first, Fast and Furious, of course. We had Obama last week declaring executive privilege after arguing himself back in 2007 that anyone who did claim that argument was basically involved in some shady dealings. Of course, they refused to hand over the documents. The Holder contempt vote is coming up. And you put out this article, Obama's need for executive privilege, and where you get into comparing Watergate, of course, under Nixon, to the current Fast and Furious scandal. So just get into how the media's treating it and a comparison between Watergate and Fast and Furious today.
Well, you know, I don't think there is any comparison to Watergate to Fast and Furious. Watergate, you had Woodward and Bernstein, and of course the Washington Post going after Nixon. You had, in fact, last I think the anniversary was last week. You had, you know, the 5 burglars caught inside the the Watergate complex. And of course, from that spurred on this lengthy, aggressive investigation by the media, and they were just salivating to go after or to connect the burglar, the team that broke into the complex with the president, with the Oval Office. And of course, their inside information from Mark Felt, allegedly Deep Throat, certainly helped. But in this case, you see virtual media's silence on this. The only major media, corporate media outlet, the only person, I should say, is Cheryl Atkinson from CBS, giving her the credit where credit is due with respect to the media, the mainstream, the corporate media. But you see nothing with respect to the issue itself, Fast and Furious, and Obama's, and the true intent of the Fast and Furious, which is Obama, Holder, Napolitano, and Clinton, their combined initiative to assault, to get rid of, to neuter the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. That's the whole thing behind this. And you hear nobody talking about that. You hear nobody talking about Obama's law school mentor, Lawrence Tribe, a big opposer to the Second Amendment. You hear nothing about Obama back in 2003 voting twice against, or I'm sorry, in 2005 and 2007 voting twice against the Castle Doctrine in Illinois, Senate Bill 2105, that would essentially outlaw guns in the home. You hear nothing about the ban, Obama's ban or Obama's stance on banning private ownership of firearms. And this is all behind Fast and Furious. So fast forward to today, where we're at today, Obama claiming executive privilege. That tells you right there that the only reason Obama did that is not to protect Holder, but to protect himself. That's what we have to really understand, because Obama is in some level, some way, shape, or form involved in this by the invocation of the executive privilege.
Well, we know that back in April 2011, the Washington Post reported Obama with this meeting with Sarah Brady, saying that he was working, quote, under the radar to basically sneak attack the Second Amendment. So according to your research, and, you know, this, from my standpoint, this is probably why, as you said, Obama's trying to cover his own behind more than Holder's. Given that he admitted this, that, you know, he was working under the radar, this was before Fast and Furious came out in the media, was it basically a botched false flag against the Second Amendment cooked up by Obama and his closest advisors?
Well, that's an interesting way of putting it. I would say it was successful. It was a very successful operation because the majority of the guns, in fact, only, I believe it was only, well, as of 2000, or in 2009, for example, 21,313 guns were found at crime scenes in Mexico. Only 5,444 were traced back to gun shops in the United States. Or 5,100 or 444 were traced back to gun shops in the United States. Now, having said that, if you're going to go after the Second Amendment, you know, it would be to his advantage, obviously, to pump as many guns as you can, as Holder called it, this iron river of guns into Mexico. That was their intent. Pumping up the Sinaloa drug cartel. That was their intent. Had this agent, Brian Terry, and the other agents, Zapata, not been killed, I think that we would have never heard anything about Fast and Furious. It would still be going on, and more guns would be going into Mexico, drugs coming into the United States. It's just incredible. So was it botched? No, I think it was botched only because of the death of Agent Terry and the death of the second agent.
Well, you know, certainly if it was intended to crush the Second Amendment, the response has been not as they wished. Gun sales at record highs, you know, Black Friday, the most recent one, again, record sales. I mean, yes. The contention that this was an operation to disrupt Mexican drug cartels is kind of derailed by the fact that the actual kingpins of the drug cartels came out in federal court a few months ago. We reported on it and admitted that they purchased the weapons inside America. These weapons weren't interceded when they got to Mexico. In fact, as you point out in your article, the agents were prevented from actually tracking the weapons, which was supposedly the whole point of the program.
That's exactly right. I mean, people like Hope McAllister, she was the head of the Fast and Furious operation. And then you've got other people, for example, the Phoenix Group 7, David Voth, who's a group supervisor. You've got all of these people who are in some way, shape, or form can be drawn back to either Barack Hussein Obama, Eric Holder, or Janet Napolitano. Bill Newell, a very infamous character in this Fast and Furious operation. He's got direct ties to various people within the Obama administration. So what we have here is, in my estimation, based on my research, is the fact that you've got, you've got admissions prior to Agent Terry's death of this operation. Is going back to as early as 2009, this one particular news conference by David Ogden, who at that time was 12 days into an appointment as Assistant U.S. Attorney General, who mentioned Fast and Furious by name, and he was standing right next to Janet Napolitano. And the other thing, too, May 3rd, 2011, Holder testified before Congress, before ICE, or before the Oversight Committee. It's interesting that the day before that testimony, that Holder and Obama both visited the East Room of the White House on May 2nd, the day before that hearing, to talk to Obama in the East Room of the White House. And the White House logs were expunged as to the purpose of the visit and the length of time of the visit.
And I mean, before the scandal erupted, the setup was this claim, which was later proven false, by the Obama administration, that 90% of weapons confiscated by the Mexican authorities linked to this violence originated in the US. And as you point out in your article, that's a complete myth, isn't it?
Yes, yes. It is. And I think Alex has been talking about this consistently, and he's got it right. You know, the American military, I mean, the American government's been selling weapons to the drug cartels. It's not the gun shop owners. It's not the people that, I mean, guns are going to Mexico, but it's with the imprimatur of this administration, and in particular, not only Eric Holder, but I believe, especially based on the claims of executive privilege and research, that Barack Hussein Obama is elbow deep in this, as is Janet Napolitano. And inside sources are saying Napolitano will see the inside of a jail at some point. Now, I mean, to me, that's a pretty powerful statement. These are inside sources saying this. I'd like to see that to be true.
Well, we've got this contempt vote coming up. We've got talk of a compromise between Holder and the Republicans. Once this unravels, you know, over and above all the birther stuff, which kind of keeps cropping up and dying down again, do you think this scandal could bring down the administration?
I'd like to think so, Paul. I really like to think so, but why hasn't it brought it down, or why hasn't? What's taken so long to this point? I'd like to think it could bring it down, but you know, you've got Boehner, you've got ISA. They're acting as if they're neutered in the presence of Elijah Cummings, for example, which is ISA's counterpart. I mean, the politics on this. I mean, what do they have on Boehner and on ISA, where ISA and Boehner are not going after Holder and company a little bit more aggressively? Why are they accepting just simply black sheets of paper for, you know, when they get subpoenaed? Why are they accepting only 3% of what is being subpoenaed? Why is this okay? Why is this okay in 2012, but in 1971 or 72 and 73 during Watergate, that would never stand? So that's my question. I'd like to see it bring down or shed some light on this administration, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that.
Okay, shifting gears now. You were kind enough to send us the email today explaining this staggering explanation that you received from your website provider, which is GoDaddy. after you basically were informed that your website was being shut down. So apparently, Doug, putting out this kind of information is, quote, maliciously harmful to individuals in the government. That's what they told you. Explain to us how it all unfolded from the start.
Well, at 7:20 p.m. on Friday, last Friday, I received an email from the internet service provider GoDaddy, where my website was hosted. And the operative word here is was, because that's since changed since that day, giving me 48 hours to remove my website from their servers, or it would be forcibly taken down. And of course, they cited some sort of violation of terms of service and gave me a link to the standard agreement. It's interesting because the terms of service was pretty broad and basic, so I contacted the investigative division, an investigator in the abuse division at GoDaddy, and I said, hey, tell me exactly what I violated, where I violated it, and how I violated it, your terms of service. And the reply was that the entirety of my website, and I think you might have the email there, that the entirety of my website was morally objectionable. And that was the first call that I made. That statement was made. And so I waited several hours, and during which time I sought counsel. Again, Canada Free Press was a great help to me, our association with them. And I sought counsel and figured that GoDaddy could do what they want. In fact, they've done this before to other websites. And so I called in the middle of the night, in the middle of their night, in the middle of my night. I called, talked to another investigator. I said, hey, really, what's up? Can you tell me what's up with this? And this guy was really kind of playing around with me in terms of, I really can't tell you, but, you know, kind of like if you can guess, you know, I might just help you along a little bit. Ultimately, it was found that the complaint ostensibly originated from a group associated with the campaign to re-elect Barack Hussein Obama. Okay, now, again, this wasn't said in that manner. It was more or less, it was a word game we were playing, basically, because he couldn't tell me, he wouldn't tell me, but if I guessed correctly, you know, there would be a silence, and of course, that's where it ended. And I believe, based on additional research and investigation, that my contact with my Department of Homeland Security source, Rosebud, I believe that that has a big part to play in this, where they don't want any more information from this DHS contact to come out because it was so explosive, and because of your program, Infowars, and Alex Jones really assisted that story in going viral, and I think that they wanted to stop any repeat of that. So in 48 hours, we had to take our site offshore and do some other things, which I won't tell, just to ensure that we're up and we're going to stay up and running, and certainly we're not going to be subjected to any type of censorship.
I mean, this just goes straight to the heart of, as you said, censorship and free speech. I mean, it was GoDaddy that lost 37,000 accounts due to their failure to oppose SOPA, the Stop Online Privacy Act, a few months back. So
that's right.
You know, they're quite clear in the fact that they don't support free speech, and we've seen that again in your case. So you're saying that it was basically the Obama truth teams that went in and demanded that your website be removed, because we've seen that before. We've seen WikiLeaks, you know, they get a phone call from Joe Lieberman, and Amazon acts as WikiLeaks off their servers. So I mean, it's not out of the question, and you're saying that basically your conversation with this representative at GoDaddy, you ascertained that that was the case.
I did, and then I also contacted today another source outside of the venue of hosting companies, just to be sure. And I said, look, do you believe, you know, well, first of all, can you do some research, and do you believe that for example, the commentary or the information with respect to my source within DHS, is this partly or wholly responsible for this? And the response I got back was, look, there's no moral objection to anything with respect to your website. I mean, you've got no pornography, nothing that would upset the reasonable sensibilities of any person, or person looking at it. And the information did back up the what was said about the DHS insider. So, you know, I mean, it's pretty clear to me that the censorship team, the Obama Truth Team, and I'm laying this right on the doorstep of the Obama Truth Team. This is me saying this now, based on my research. And again, we had a really scramble this weekend. I mean, my son was getting married on Saturday. I get this Friday night. I got 48 hours to find another home for my website right now. It's a tedious process, as people know, time-consuming and costly. It could be very costly. And that was thrown at me all at once. And again, 48 hours, or else we're going to pull the plug. You know, so there's definitely some interesting timing, as well as I suspect we do. Again, with your help, and the propulsion that you provided to the story, I really think that that they were very upset about the story, about the DHS information leaking out.
Well, I mean, that's just amazing. I'm definitely going to do an article on this tomorrow with the video interview we've just done. Now, in closing, tell people about your website, bearing in mind the fact you were able to save it in the end and get it up on another server, on another ISP. Tell people about your website and some of your other material here in closing.
Well, thank you, Paul, for allowing me to do that. It's HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. Despite the name, not affiliated with any government agency. We're independent. We're an independent investigative agency. And our sister company is CanadaFreePress.com. And I have to give them a lot of thanks for their involvement in all of this. And what we do is we attempt to expose the truth with respect to the real terror threat. At this point, the real terror threat is, in fact, this administration, and the entire New World Order architecture, I should say, is the real terror threat right now. The World Bank, the people behind that, and we're exposing pretty much parallel with your organization, the same people, and it's so important like this to work together, because certainly, you know, our information verifies what you find, and vice versa. So it's so important to have this relationship, I think.
Well, we'll certainly have you back on as Fast and Furious unfolds. And as I said, I mean, that's a staggering story about GoDaddy and the Obama Truth Teams at work again. I'm going to do an article about that first thing in the morning, and we're going to have this video interview embedded in the article. But for now, Douglas J. Hagmann, thanks for joining us this evening on Infowars Nightly News.
Thanks for having me, sir.
Thank you. Remember, folks, prisonplanet.tv, that's where you can support us. Many of you will be watching this on YouTube, but all your support is very much needed. The server costs, the bandwidth, the websites, the employees, you know the deal by now. And we're still running the 15-day free trial at prisonplanet.tv. You get live streaming video of Infowars Nightly News, The Alex Jones Show, speeches, special events, archive material going back far back as April 2004 when we first launched it. And we've kept it at the same price ever since, and it's prisonplanet.tv. Also, the Infowars social network, Planet Infowars. Again, thousands and thousands of you have been joining this. A massive rallying point for the resistance. You can search for groups in your area, get active, meet each other, start campaigns. There's even a dating section for meeting other people, and it's planetinfowars.com, so be sure to sign up today. And that's going to wrap it up this edition of Infowars Nightly News. We'll see you tomorrow. I've been Paul Joseph Watson. Thank you.